How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Got a lot to talk about from a very busy Raw last night. 4 NXT stars ended up getting called up to the main roster. In addition to that, we've got some news coming up over the next couple of days involving Kofi Kingston, NXT, Fastlane, WrestleMania, and more. Obviously, a lot of questions still to come out of this. It appeared last night that it was an official call-up of Ricochet, Aleister Black, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa. But, I mean, we don't know that for sure. I guess we'll find out. Feeling is that more will be known tomorrow because, obviously, there's going to be a production meeting before Smackdown. Everybody figures that Triple H is going to explain what's going on. I have a theory about what's going on. A theory, mind you, so don't report this all over the internet. I'll talk about that when we come back from the break. But they debuted last night. I know, got a lot of feedback. I don't watch Raw live because I get the West Coast feed, so I can't start watching the show till everyone else is finished watching the show. And last night, man, I started to get these messages. Oh my God, this Raw is terrible. What a horrible Raw. And usually when I get those messages, I'm expecting the worst, and the show isn't quite that bad. Now, there was some weird stuff that happened last night on the show, but I do have to say, as far as the call-ups last night, they called up 4 guys from NXT. Those 4 guys all were involved in wrestling matches, and they all won. So, for the people that think this was like the worst set of call-ups of all time, not even close. There have been plenty of call-ups that have been far worse than these. We'll see where they go from here. We'll see what they do from here. We'll see what the story is with the championships in NXT. But it was not a disaster in terms of the call-ups last night. So we can talk about that here on the show. Kofi Kingston and Fastlane. He looks to be the number 1 contender for the championship at Fastlane. It's going to be announced officially tonight, so anything can change. We'll tell you about that. Take your phone calls, emails, text messages. What did you think about Raw? Go over the Smackdown preview for tonight and so much more. Back in a moment with Mike Sempervive to kick it off. Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. 4 NXT stars made their presence felt on tonight's episode of Raw. This from WrestlingObserver.com. Triple H made the announcement at the start of the show that Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Aleister Black, and Ricochet would be making their WWE debuts on tonight's show. It was not made clear what brand they would be on as they used NXT graphics to introduce the wrestlers. Ricochet made his debut first, saving Finn Balor from a Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush attack. 4 ended up competing in a tag team match. Ricochet pinned Rush with the 630. Ciampa and Gargano followed, facing the Revival in a throwback to their feud back on NXT television. Former DIY picked up the win with their old finish, super kick knee combo. Chad Gable and Bobby Roode confronted Gargano and Ciampa before the match, said they deserved the opportunity that Gargano and Ciampa got. Aleister Black, last to make his debut, interrupting Elias, who was about to perform. He picked up the win with the Black Mass. All 4 guys won. It's an important thing right there. Now, this is speculation, everybody. You understand? I'm speculating here. So, don't write some news story on the internet about this. I always have to preface that because the other day on Observer Radio, Dave and I got a mailbag question. Since Vince doesn't like old people on television, how long do you think it'll be before he gets rid of Michael Cole? Because Cole is, I think, 50 or something like that, somewhere around there. Dave said, could be at any time. Next day, articles on the internet. WWE to get rid of Michael Cole. So anyway, WWE is hyping an announcement that will be made on this week's episodes of 205 Live and NXT. Drake Maverick, the on-screen GM, tweeted there will be an announcement concerning the brand and WrestleMania tonight. Huge announcement concerning 205 Live and WrestleMania tonight, straight after SmackDown Live on the most exciting hour of action on the WWE Network. WWE.com preview for tomorrow's episode of NXT television notes that a special announcement will be made on the show. Quote, get ready, because this week's NXT will feature a special announcement. With no additional details currently available, speculation about what's in store for the Black and Gold brand is running wild. Be among the first to find out when NXT streams Wednesday at 8, 7 Central on the network. This is my speculation, everybody. Last night, Hunter came out, babyface, and he said, I don't just work for Raw and SmackDown. I also oversee the third brand, NXT. And they always try and say it's a third brand. They don't say it's developmental. It's the third brand. They brought up 4 more guys. This on the heels of all of the call-ups from the December period, January period, the Lacey Evans and such. So that's like 8 people now have been called up from the main roster in the last 2 months. They have a full roster. Like, think about all the people that weren't on the show last night. Alexa Bliss, just the first one that pops into mind. There's a lot of talent they've got. They have too much talent right now. A couple of months ago, I was talking about how the Revival were unhappy and how the Revival had actually asked to go back to NXT. Ty Dillinger tweeted that he had asked to go back to NXT and been shot down. Bayley and Sasha have noted that they want to defend the titles on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. I think the big announcement for NXT is going to be that they are going to be getting some talent from Raw and SmackDown. I think that they were trying very hard last night to push NXT as a third brand in such a way that if people get moved from Raw and SmackDown to NXT, it's not looked at as, oh my God, they're being demoted. They're being sent back to developmental. I think we're going to get some people going to NXT to make up for the NXT people that are coming up to Raw. And I think it's going to be better for everybody. So I don't want to get people excited. I don't want to say this is going to happen. But this is my gut feeling, and I hope it happens.
It's a great idea. Absolutely. And even if you wanted to throw in there, they can have a match at WrestleMania, too. An NXT match should be on the WrestleMania card if you wanted to do that, too. That wouldn't hurt my feelings. I'd like that. But, yeah, I mean, that idea is great. And, yeah, they did seem to point out yesterday that it was the third brand, not anything other than being maybe a little bit smaller, but we're still on equal terms here. So, yeah, when guys do get moved back down, Tyler Breezes and stuff like that, that would be fine. Now, what they do with these people coming up to the main roster is a completely different story.
And this person says, didn't Sasha and Bayley say they would defend the title in NXT? It's been mentioned, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. And so I think...
They have to.
I think there's a very good chance. I don't know if it's going to be on a takeover because they've got... If they defend the titles in a takeover, they have to defend the titles 2 nights in a row on takeover and on the main roster. So they got...
Not if there's not a women's title match or a tag team title match program.
I don't envision them not doing a program. I think they'll defend the title at a taping. I think
not every single month.
I think they'll defend the tag team titles on television. I don't think they're going to do a takeover match.
See, but I could actually see them doing that because if you have 9 matches for a show, and you just talked about how massive the roster is, I mean, you can easily have 9 matches between the pre-show and the main show and still not have a women's tag match. And if they have gone to go do tapings for a month and they're dealing with NXT tag teams, and I can easily see them doing. Now, it doesn't have to be all the time, every single month or anything like that, but I can absolutely see them like once a quarter doing that.
Here's the problem. This is a great idea, but you're looking at this from Hunter's perspective. You got to think about this from Vince's perspective. Let's go pitch this to Vince. We just created new women's tag team titles, and they're not going to do a program building up to the next pay-per-view, and they're not going to defend the titles on the pay-per-view because we're going to use them only in NXT.
Brian,
are you kidding, pal?
You talk about all the time how this guy forgets about things. And again, if he has got a bunch of other toys in front of him that he wants to play with, he can easily forget that there's women's tag team titles, or at least justify not having them on every show and letting them be open to doing it in NXT.
We'll see what happens. I'll bet you that don't happen. We'll see. Person says, WWE should never do another live event in Lafayette.
That was another thing last night.
The crowd was dead.
I understand that you have the opportunity, I guess, the daylight to bring these people up, so you go ahead and do it in that moment. But you have a bunch of people you've brought up you haven't done anything with. Now, these people are different than those people, but you're bringing them up in Lafayette, Louisiana, when you have... Forget about Atlanta next week, because you still have 3 weeks to go until Fastlane, but you have Philadelphia on March 4th. I hope this is just a reminder that if you're going to debut people like this and you're close to doing it in hot cities, and because what's the reason they didn't have to be brought up this week? You could have easily waited. That maybe you wait until you're in a town that's actually really hot and would really respond like Philadelphia would to a bunch of new people coming up.
Dude, people in WWE didn't even know this was going to happen yesterday. Vince just made a decision and he wanted it done now. That's what happened here. I got a buddy here on Twitter, sent me a photograph from last night, and the photograph is the back of the guy's head in front of him who's asleep. Says, guy in front of me sleeping during the show last night. It was like a funeral the entire night. I was yelling for everybody to make some kind of noise. Everybody looked at me like I was an idiot. I hope WWE never comes back to this town again if this is what the crowd... This is from a guy who bought a ticket and was in the crowd. He doesn't want them to come back to his town. A complete embarrassment of a crowd, he said.
Wow.
Well, hey, yeah, sometimes you can blame the crowd, but sometimes you got to blame the company. And really, I can't even blame the company last night. They gave that place some big news. Ricochet debuts, DIY, Aleister Black. But hey, you run Lafayette, Louisiana. Not everybody watches NXT. What, have 500,000 viewers on the network? In a company, or in a country of, what is it now, 300 million people or whatever? Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to watch that show, have no idea who these people are. So maybe a bigger market might have been better.
Yeah, I think so.
Person says, why have these call-ups a month from Mania? They already have guys like EC3 and Heavy Machinery. They haven't done anything with them. Actually, they've done a little with Heavy Machinery. If you were going to do the call-ups last night, why not do it at the Rumble and make the Rumble a better show? Because the Rumble was a month ago. Vince made this decision last couple of days. Literally, there were people there last night that had no idea why this happened. There are people there last night that have no idea if these are call-ups. There's a lot of people that don't know what's going on. They figure that today, during the Smackdown production meeting, everything will be made a little bit more clear. But there's a lot of people who don't know what's going on. So Vince just decides to do things, and then he decides sometimes to not do things. And by the way, since we were talking about it last night, there was a Mojo Rawley video, but it was on the pre-show for the pay-per-view, not on Raw last night. So apparently he hasn't been dropped yet. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Well, plans changed once, so they can change again, but a change of plans took place on Monday. Kofi Kingston, now the front-runner to be announced as WWE Champion Daniel Bryan's opponent for Fastlane at tonight's Smackdown in New Orleans, Louisiana. As of Monday morning, WWE already had plans in place for both Fastlane, March 10th in Cleveland, and WrestleMania 4 weeks later, which did not involve Kingston. However, based on the fans' response to Kingston's performance in the Gauntlet on Tuesday, and even more, the Elimination Chamber on Sunday, where he was a stand-in for the injured Mustafa Ali, the decision was changed to go to Bryan versus Kingston. It's not clear how or if this change of plans will affect the original WWE title plans for Mania. Bryan was scheduled to face somebody making a return, as opposed to one of the current SmackDown brand regulars at the year's biggest show. I still think it's going to be Bryan versus Kofi Kingston at Fastlane. Big E's going to screw Kofi.
Wow.
It's Big E versus Kofi at WrestleMania. That's my prediction.
I don't know. I think at that point, if you're going to go through with something with Kofi and Daniel Bryan, even in the same stratosphere at WrestleMania, that you actually make it where it's a 3-match series, even though it's non-traditional. And at the end, at WrestleMania, on that big stage, on a night where people are going to overcome everything, with Becky Lynch, assuming she's going to close the show, holding up the title over Charlotte and Ronda, Kofi is a part of that. And he's there holding up his title on the same exact night. And then you can have Big E screw him. You can have some sort of conflict. You can have stress. We were all together, and then, now Big E's, upset. However you want to play this, you can go ahead and do it that way. But I think if you're going to go ahead and do anything with Kofi around the title picture, why not do it that way? And that way you can really have your happy moment at WrestleMania before you go into your summertime heat.
Well, here's the problem with this theory. He was never even supposed to be in any of these matches. And as of Monday, he wasn't even supposed to be at Fastlane. So my guess is giving him Fastlane, and the plan still being that Bryan faces somebody else at Mania, then he's probably not going to win the title. And you got to look at it this way, too.
So what match then do you do at WrestleMania with the New Day? It's Kofi against Big E?
Yeah. It's already, by the way, it's already a 3-match series because they wrestled each other in the Gauntlet and Kofi won. They wrestled each other at the pay-per-view and Bryan won. So this is the third match at Fastlane. They're 1-1. And if you're going to beat Kofi, I don't see them just beating him clean as the babyface. Something's got to happen to set up something else down the road. Rowan tries to interfere, New Day comes out, maybe Xavier, who's still friends with Kofi, fends off. Rowan, then Big E jumps in the ring. You think he's going to go after Bryan, but then he screws his friend because Kofi's getting all these opportunities. He didn't get anything. He's mad about it. He's sick of pancakes. I can't wait to hear that. I could write that promo for him. A lot of ways it could go here.
Well, we're also assuming, too, Luke Harper could be coming back, too. I guess the team up is part of Rowan and Daniel Bryan's team. I don't know. Then that looms Bray Wyatt somewhere around there, too. So, I don't know.
To the phones, you're on the air. What's up?
Hi, this is Bryan from Toronto. I just had one quick thing I wanted to say before I ask a quick question. Regarding the rope breaks in the Elimination Chamber match on Sunday, I know, Bryan, you made a pretty big stink about it on the Bryan and Vinny show. I just wanted to kind of clarify, and I want to say first that it is 100% the job of the commentators to convey this, which they don't do, obviously. But if someone has someone in a submission hold in a no DQ match, such as the Elimination Chamber, and the person in the hold grabs the ropes, they're not forced to release the hold. That no DQ stip comes into play there. So that's where the no rope break thing happens. But if for some reason the person in the hold were to submit while in the ropes, it wouldn't count. Same way that if
are you Lance Storm
on the bottom rope?
Are you Lance Storm?
I heard him say something similar years ago, so that may have been where I got it originally.
Okay, listen, here's my argument to this. Here's my argument to this, okay? Let's say that you and I have been going for 60 minutes in some sort of match. We're both completely exhausted, okay? I put you in some brutal submission hold, and you crawl and you end up in the ropes, okay? And I refuse to break the hold because you're in the ropes and I don't have to break the hold. You have a heart attack and die. I know this is extreme, but, you're dead now, okay? I win. Right? We don't rule it a draw because you were in the ropes. I mean, I clearly won that match.
You could throw it out.
Whether it's no DQ or not, if you're in the ropes and you give up, I give up, I can't go any further, I mean, it should be over.
Well, you're not wrong. I'm just kind of trying to explain the logic behind it a little bit.
That could be the logic. I'm telling you another one here before you go on. Here's another. You know what I think they should do?
Yep.
Okay. This is what I think they should do. Job of a commentator is to be in there and tell stories and pretend it's like a sporting event and explain to you what's going on in the ring, okay? If you're a wrestler and 99.9% of the time, if you put a submission hold on somebody and they get the ropes, you have to break because the referee is counting, right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, if that happens 99% of the time, 99.9%, then if you're a wrestler and you're in a no DQ match and your opponent fights to the ropes and you let go because you forgot about it, you forgot the rules, then would it be so hard for the announcers to say, he didn't have to break that hold, but clearly he forgot that there are no DQs? That's real. Because wrestlers do forget in matches like that. There was a WCW match where Dean Malenko, the rule was if you touched the floor, you lost. He forgot about it in the middle of the match for real, slid outside, and they literally had to end the match because he forgot. This kind of thing happens. Why can't the announcers just explain that to people? You know what I'm saying? It's real.
Oh, I know what you're saying. Yeah, you're just asking too much of the announcers, I believe.
I know. I do that.
But the question that I had for you real quick.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more
the production. Real quick before I go.
Go ahead.
It's regarding the interview that Dave and Garrett did with Chris Jericho over the weekend. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what New Japan has done in America over the last 2 years or so, where Jericho brought up a lot of really good points about, the shows over the last month that had no Japanese stars, and why not just cancel the shows so as not to leave a bad impression on their fans, and not announcing cards well beforehand in the case of the one in September, and even the one for the G1 Supercard where the winner of the New Japan Cup won't be decided until 2 weeks before the show. I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on all of that and what New Japan should do in America going forward.
Well, I want to thank you very much for the call, and here's all I got to say about this. Jericho is absolutely right, but the problem with what he's saying is that it's just not what New Japan does. And they're still whether they want to do an American expansion or not, they are a Japan-centric company. And the way they run their business in Japan is extremely sports-oriented in the sense that they can't even announce a card for a show until, for example, a previous tournament has wrapped up. So, like, they'll announce a card a week before the show. And the expectation is that the fans will still buy tickets, they'll get a big walk-up, whatever. So they come to America and they do the same thing. Like, we're running a New Japan show, and yeah, there are no Japanese on the show, but like it's still a New Japan show, and everybody there is largely still New Japan talent. And we're not going to announce the lineups until this tournament is over, because that's not what we do. I mean, to me, there is a happy medium. And the happy medium is this. If you don't want to announce cards in advance, because announcing the cards will reveal tournament winners or finishes or whatever, at the very least, you've got to announce every single talent that's going to be on the show.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of American fans, like, okay, so we don't know what the top 4 matches are going to be on a show, but you know what? We know that Tanahashi's going to be there, and Okada's going to be there, and Suzuki is going to be there, and Ishii is going to be there. Like, at least announce a full lineup of talent that are going to be there. I mean, yeah, maybe they should have canceled the shows when the whole deal got screwed up with the visas. But like in their minds, we're promoting a New Japan show, you're getting a New Japan show, like what's the problem? That's their mindset. And believe me, there are people in New Japan, and I'm not just talking American talent, but like, you know, people in the office that don't agree with the way that they're doing their business. But at the end of the day, like, the people in charge are going to do it the way they think they should do it. And, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but that's just the way that they run their business.
I agree on the first point. On the second thing about canceling those shows, I don't believe that would have benefited anyone to cancel those shows, especially because those shows, yes, they were based around the fact that Nagata was coming and Ishii, but what their goal of those shows were to get those young guys going more and in front of crowds and, that sort of thing. So to do a make good for the people that bought tickets, to throw themselves down on the sword and do something for them, yes. I think canceling them, no. Now, being more open about what was going on and their issues, I think that was the big issue. If people would have known about these visa issues in advance and had some understanding of what was going on and have the ability to then do something with those tickets, I think, yes, that should have happened. But I don't think just canceling the shows, I don't think that would have benefited anybody.
Well, let me go back to canceling the shows. So, if this were a Cow Palace show where all of the top stars were going to be there and there were visa issues and none of them were going to be there, then to me, yeah, you got to cancel that show.
Well, yes,
but in the case of the shows where the visa issues came up, the top stars were never going to be there anyway. They were on tour in Japan. It was always going to be a show with only a few stars and mostly guys from the dojo. So in that case, like, you lost the Japanese stars, but you still got dojo people and indie stars, so that's a little bit different. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also WrestlingObserver.com. We got a million text messages, so a couple more of these calls, and I got to get into these. You're on the air, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your main man, Rudo.
What's up, Rudo?
Hey, I just want to touch on something you guys said before on the previous show. You said that no one on the roster, not Becky, not Kofi, not anyone, can really make a huge impact as far as the ratings go. There's an incremental growth starting from the stands and then reaching the airways, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, because there are so many underutilized talent on the WWE roster, both on the main roster and in NXT, as well as UK. And this is a question for both you, Bryan and Mike. Who would you say could do that very same thing for AEW?
As far as, like, make a big difference for the company?
Exactly.
From the people they have now, or from getting somebody from somewhere else?
Getting someone, say, from NXT. If you could pull anyone from NXT and say that this guy probably could do that.
I see. Well, I want to thank you very much for the call. I mean, AEW, we don't know anything about how AEW is going to do on television. I mean, they could do well right out of the gate. They've got stars. They've got Kenny Omega. They've got Cody and the Young Bucks. I mean, they've got a lot of potentially big names, and I don't know. Here's the thing. If nobody is moving numbers for WWE right now, I'm not sure how pulling anybody from NXT or even the main roster and sending them to All Elite is going to drastically move numbers there. I mean, maybe it will. I don't know. I mean, maybe they just don't draw numbers because they're in the WWE system, and if you took them out of it, they'd be big draws somewhere else. It's hard to say. I don't really have a good answer for that. We got to get television for AEW and see how it does at the beginning and see how people react to it, and then we can start making fantasy booking ideas like that.
Yeah, you kind of have to see what they exactly what they are first, and you also have to remember too. Like, somebody would be quick to say, "Well, Velveteen Dream." Well, yeah, but he'll be Patrick Clark. Now he'll still have the same amount of charisma and things like that. But we saw it in Lafayette, Louisiana last night.
He could be the Velveeta Dream. That's not trademarked
with Gargano and Tommaso, where they're huge stars in NXT.
Cheese lover.
I mean, they've been outstanding in NXT, and there were a whole bunch of people that didn't know who they were, so I don't know if taking anybody on NXT and putting them in a startup organization is going to be something that makes a TV executive or the average fan kind of like pop or anything like that. From the outside, and I could be wrong about this, it would be a name like a Goldberg or a Batista or something like that. If you wanted to hotshot and get attention right away, it would have to be a name like that, an established name.
And hey, think about this. Look at how successful AEW and the individuals involved have been over the last couple of years. And the Young Bucks, never in WWE. Kenny Omega was an NXT guy that never made the main roster. And Cody hasn't been on the main roster forever. And he was never pushed as a big-time main eventer, except briefly, I guess, during that period with Randy Orton. But look at how big a stars they made themselves to wrestling fans. I mean, the Chris Jericho that moved numbers for New Japan, that wasn't the WWE Chris Jericho. That was a non-WWE Chris Jericho character that he created, and it did huge business. So, again, the idea that AEW needs a WWE star, or they need somebody from WWE to move ratings. I mean, we have no evidence that they need anybody like that. They've done just fine with the people they've got.
To be fair with Jericho, it was Jericho's name still. The character, if you saw it, was something that was different than his WWE persona, but it was his name that got people there. And then once people saw the name, they got to see the new Chris Jericho.
Well,
so
yeah, but I mean, it was his name, but it was also what he did with that. All those angles that he did leading to the Dome shows.
But
you'd
the whole
never
thing,
see that in WWE.
No, but how I took this guy's question has been, what would be the pop right away? What would be the hot shot right away that would do it? And again, I don't think there's anybody. I mean, as much as I love Adam Cole, he walks into an AEW. There's a zillion things you could do with him. Who knows where you could go with him in that scenario? But he's not going to move anything right away. The people that move things right away, and that's what we're talking about with the incremental stuff. It's just got to happen over time. There's no one person that's going to jar anything back into greatness for WWE or put AEW, frankly, anywhere near WWE's footing.
Last call, you're on the air. What's up?
Hey, this is Alan from Saginaw, Michigan.
What's up?
All right, so just 2 quick points. This was the first Raw I watched in about a month, and for me, it was just another demonstration of the WWE has no idea what they're doing. And what I mean by that is, I think it was actually the right thing for Ciampa and Gargano to win. However, we just crowned the Revival Tag Team Champions, and their first match as champions is a clean pin. What are they doing?
Well, I actually, honest to God, don't mind that because they won the titles and they need challengers. And as long as Gargano and Ciampa end up their challengers after beating them, I'm fine with that.
I just feel like it, once again, devalues the champions and the championship belts, but that's just personal opinion. And
well, here's my thing to that. don't you then devalue your two NXT champions on a show that we talked about earlier on, that you were kind of treating NXT and with better regard than you have in the past? You have their two main champions who have carried that brand and have been in a blood feud and now are back together again after all of that time. They lose to the Revival.
I think his argument was don't do the match.
Well, yeah, okay. I was going to say, because that would be the only argument I can make. I don't think losing to those two guys is that really that big of a deal, considering that they're individual champions that are supposed to be on these guys' level or higher.
Yeah, these are your North American and NXT champion who have been a long-time tag team. I mean, I don't think them beating the Revival is ruining anything. Like, if he brought up Velveteen Dream and pick another random guy, Oney Lorcan, and they beat the Revival, I mean, then you could at least argue these are just two random guys from NXT that beat the champions. I still probably wouldn't have a problem with it if you did a feud based on it. Maybe Velveteen and Oney Lorcan would be a great team. But DIY double champions beating the Revival to set up a tag team program, I don't think that's the end of the world. Okay, here we go. A million text messages. Happy for Kofi. The fans getting behind him has been awesome. But is it just me, or does the Mania card feel empty this year? The last few years, we already knew 7-8 matches for Mania, while this year we only know like 3 to 4. Well, yeah, that is true, but we got one big-time major match that everybody is passionate about one way or the other. Whether you're passionate because you just want to see the match, you love Becky, you hate Charlotte, you think there should be a three-way, you don't think there should be a three-way, they have a main event of WrestleMania that everybody's going to watch. So the rest of the show is the rest of the show. Hopefully it's a good card. But when you have a main event like this, I mean, the rest of the card is whatever. I think the return of Roman Reigns, this person says, will make an instant difference for WWE in the ratings long term, and not just for the day that he returns. Well, I mean, if you look at when he left and where they are today, I mean, they're down. But it wasn't like when he gave up, or I shouldn't say when he gave up, I'm sorry. When he left, when he walked out or whatever, that they died in the ratings. They were down. They've slowly been dropping since he's been gone. So, I mean, what may have happened was when he did the leukemia thing, maybe like a lot of people didn't believe it at first, and they tuned in the next week because they were Roman Reigns fans. And when it was clear that he wasn't coming back, they were like, okay, well, I'm going to watch something else for a while. And when he comes back, maybe all those people will come back at once, or maybe it'll be a slow incremental rise. I don't think it's going to be up a half point permanently every week when Roman Reigns comes back. I don't think anybody's doing that. Even The Rock. I think if The Rock came back, they'd have a huge number the first week. If they announced that he was returning, I think they'd have a huge bump the first week, and then it would go back to normal. Maybe a little bit higher. But nobody is turning this ship around immediately.
You know what? I think The Rock could actually get it up there a little bit more than just dripping right back down to the baseline again after week one. I'm not saying it would be altogether overnight making great gains back to where you're doing 8s again or anything like that. But I mean, I think he could be more than just dropping everything back down to 1 million viewers again the next week. Or 1,000,007, whatever the hell it is.
I was reading another text message when I said gave up that I gave up in it, so sometimes that happens, yeah. This person thinks Vince has just given up. Like he's just going to do anything. Hey, here's another one, by the way. Speaking of giving up on continuity and everything. Plans change, everyone, but I was told, good chance on Smackdown tonight, you're going to see another one of those random babyface heel changes where there's no storyline, there's no explanation. Somebody just comes out tonight and they were either a babyface or a heel last week, and now they've switched this week. So we'll see. I was also told Lio Rush and Lashley made up on Instagram, for those of you wondering. Not making this up. So yeah, in that sense, he has given up on continuity.
Why do they bring a team out or make an introduction and then they throw it to the announcers who throw it to a video package on a completely different topic and then throw it to commercial and then come back and have the... It's like... How that show is, just everything about that show is just, it's literally mind-numbing by the time you get done the end of it, if you can actually watch it in one shot.
Dude, it is WCW. They, on the pay-per-view on Sunday, in the middle of the opening match, they brought out brand new formats for all of the announcers to switch up, I guess, the finishes of that first match. That changed on the air. That's WCW right there. Person says, the most damaging episode of Raw I've ever seen last night. Well, that's not true.
Well,
It was not great, but it was not the most damaging episode ever.
this man not a fan of Lacey Evans with the new Bushwhackers.
Well, he's more thinking they destroyed the continuity of NXT by having Tommaso and... But I mean, Gargano and Ciampa have been kind of working out together on NXT. They have been working together. It's not... I mean, they teamed together on Halftime Heat, so this is not totally destroying continuity like with the Bashams back in the day.
Can I ask you a question? Could you handle having that feud if they decide to go and they're working together and then it's a split because Johnny is still going to kill Tommaso? Can you handle having that match as a featured match at WrestleMania when you have NXT so loaded with a bunch of things you could do the night before, or is that just,
of course
are you
can.
killing it that way?
Of course you can. But...
Would you do it?
Well, here's the thing. You got to remember that they are competing against Ring of Honor at Madison Square Garden that sold out very, very quickly. And we were told like a year ago, it wasn't a year ago, it was SummerSlam last year, that this was going to be like the most packed takeover card you've ever seen. And so, if that's the mindset, then you need Gargano and Ciampa in some form or fashion on that show. And it should be for the NXT title. I mean, that should be a year-long build. They face off for the title one last time. Gargano gets the big win or whatever. I mean, that's your NXT match. I would not put it on Mania. I'd put it on NXT TakeOver.
Would you go old school and do it without the belt on the line? Because
no.
Here's the thing.
Gargano wins
both
the
of
title.
those guys I could see up on the main roster where it's like Texas Death style or whatever it would be, where it's like the title wouldn't be on the line, but you do see Johnny stand there and get the ultimate revenge.
No, Gargano wins the title.
Fair enough.
They've already done a bunch of stipulation matches with no title on the line.
But how long does Gargano then stay in NXT?
Who cares?
Both of those guys should be on the main roster.
It's very clear they can be in both places. That was made clear last night.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sliding those guys up and down. Like, I'm making them a focal part of Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah, that's fine. They can do their NXT tapings and also work the main roster. It'll hurt NXT house shows, but those shows aren't lighting the world on fire anyway, so...
And you're not doing title matches on all those shows anyway.
They got other people that can work those shows. Back in a moment, Wrestling Observer Live. This person here says, I just watched the 5 things you need to know before a Smackdown video on WWE YouTube. I'm pretty sure they're about to go with Sasha and Bayley versus the Iconics. Yikes. Well, has to happen. I mean, look at all the teams in that chamber. I mean, you're going to have some bad matches. And also on the official WWE preview here, new Daniel Bryan's Fastlane opponent to be revealed. Can Kofi Kingston rebound from the chamber defeat? How will Charlotte react to Becky's assault? Will the NXT takeover continue? And The Miz will issue a public apology to Shane McMahon.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I cannot wait for this storyline to continue.
Uh-oh.
Lighting the world on fire here.
He's going to start going crazy.
Maybe Shane's going to turn. I mean, Miz has his show coming out where he's a massive babyface. I mean, everyone's expecting Miz to turn, but I don't know if Miz is going to turn here, everybody. Could be Shane McMahon.
Do you think Shane is one day going to look at the Miz's dad and then have flashbacks of not being loved by his dad or something like that? He attacks Mr. Miz, laying him out, which causes strife and also makes a pretty good episode of the show?
Ay. A pretty good episode of the show.
Of Miz and Mrs., sure.
They're all good episodes of the show.
They like to blend those.
Actually, the last one sucked. I think the last 2 were terrible.
Well,
they were just like, we're on a bus going to our next place. Cool. For 25 minutes.
How was the banter?
Nothing else happened. This person here asking me about Bernie announcing his 2020 bid. Why are you asking me about that? Is he in the WWE Hall of Fame? Did I miss something? Jim Cornette recently gave his thoughts on Raw, and his major gripe was the random camera cuts and commercial breaks, saying that this clash with WWE programs during Jim's tenure that you don't say. I don't know what's going on with this show sometimes. They zoom in and out, they cut randomly, they go to commercial, and they do the heat during the commercial.
There's a lot of guys who have worked for them who have said they've lost the plot, and that's pretty obvious.
All right, we're out of time, everybody. Thanks all for listening today. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers and listeners, back tomorrow with more. And hey, Bryan and Vinny and Craig show back tonight after 3 weeks off. Wrestling Observer Live.